The world looks to California to answer the hard questions, for redemption, to introduce the unfamiliar, to be resilient. Because California bounces back, holds us accountable, values who we are, remains vigilant, defies those in our way, and stands for community. Here on the West Coast, we're at the center of it all. Los Angeles Times, the state of what's next.
Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to the Envelope Live screening series. I'm Michael Ordoña. I cover film and television for the Los Angeles Times, and I'm very happy to be here in Los Angeles with the temperature very comfortably in the 80s today. I'm sitting here with my cold drink and the fan on. I have no fear of frostbite or wolverines or bear attacks or anything like that. So from the relative safety of this life of luxury, I'll be delighted to chat with some of the folks who made the show you just watched. Life Below Zero, the Emmy Award-winning documentary series about living in Alaska. It's on National Geographic. So tonight we have with us several of the people who made it, starting with series subject Ricko DeWilde, whom you just saw on an emotional journey to burn down his brother's hunting cabin. Editor Tony Diaz is a 4-time Emmy nominee for his work on the show, winning in 2017. Director of photography Simeon Houtman is also a 4-time Emmy nominee for Life Below Zero. He won in 2016 and 2018. And finally, we have executive producer and showrunner Joe Litzinger, who of course shared the 2019 nomination for Outstanding Unstructured Reality Program. So please join me in welcoming Ricko, Tony, Sim, and Joe. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hey, hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really happy to have you here, and looking like you're fairly warm and safe.
Nice and cozy.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess congratulations are in order for you passing the milestone of your 150th episode. That's a significant number. And you know, Ricko, of course, you've only been on the show for the last few seasons, but for any of you, could you ever have imagined a show about the rigors of living in Alaska getting to 150 episodes, much less generating 3 spin-offs? I mean, what's the secret? Why is it still generating so much interest?
I think, well, I guess I'll jump in real quick and say, no, definitely could not imagine 10 years, 150 episodes. But it's been, a wild ride. And I think just a quick, secret is like you'll see when you, hear Sim and Ricko and Tony talk, that it's really the crew and the behind the scenes team and the trust that the cast has with us and we have with them. And, of course, being lucky enough to work with Nat Geo and BBC, 2 incredible brands, and just trying real hard to keep it fresh through the years.
You were saying something earlier before we were on camera about how long it takes to make the season. Could you guys tell me about how much time, how many hours you think it takes to make one season of this show?
Sure. I mean, these guys, Tony is editing, thousands of hours of footage, and Sim is in the field for hundreds of hours, many, many days. Generally it's about a 9-month project to get 19 episodes. I'll let, Sim can talk about the field, of course, and Tony the edit, but, we have probably a couple hundred hours of footage for every episode, and it's about 12 to 13 days in intense conditions to get to that place.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hundreds of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I think the beauty about this show is it films throughout the year. So you're up there in the peak of summer, but you're also up there in the dead of winter, which takes some adjustment. But yeah, it goes through kind of every extreme of Alaska and every weather you can even imagine. There you go. That's a great picture. It gets cold.
About what would be the difference temperature-wise going from summer to the coldest part of winter?
I would say, it gets up to the 90s. I know in the interior I've filmed with Jesse, and that gets up to the 90s. And then just filming with Ricko this past winter, it was down to minus 60 for days. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So you've got everything in between that too.
And being in an editing bay in Los Angeles, real nice. That swing from winter to summer in LA is much different.
See, I was going to say, Tony, Joe said that there were hundreds of hours of footage, which sounds like a real tough task, but you get to sit in a place as nice as the one I'm sitting in.
Sure.
I mean, Ricko, you live there. How do you cope with that? I mean, how do you deal with such extreme changes in the weather, going from 90s in the summer to below 60 in the winter?
Well, for one, you got to plan ahead. You got to think far ahead to try to deal with what's coming. And I never thought there'd be a show or I'd be on a show about living in Alaska. I mean, it's second nature. We just we have this knowledge that's basically passed down to us with native culture out here. It's knowledge that's passed on that makes it more comfortable for us in these extreme environments. And I think you kind of see past that. You don't see that until like I'm on a show now and they're like, I could be doing something. I don't even think it's interesting. And the producers and the camera guys are like, wait, explain this. So I start explaining it, and then you see it generates a lot of interest from the audience in the end. And to me, I guess it's second nature, but it's an extreme environment, but that's what I grew up in. So I'm used to it, and I'm used to planning ahead to deal with it. So it's not a big deal to me, but I think it's a lot of helpful tips for sure for anyone that's thinking about trying to live in this environment.
Yeah, I should think that for anyone who doesn't live there, the very concept of how to move around outside in 60 below would be pretty interesting. How do you not die? Sim, you've won a couple of Emmys for your cinematography. I'm really curious about how you adjust technically to those conditions. I mean, do you have custom equipment, or in your time working on the show, have you innovated some things that would make it more effective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially filming in the cold conditions, we have hand warmers. We bring in coolers that we put, like especially drone batteries, which hate the cold. We'll put those in little coolers with hand warmers and boil bottles of water and put that in there and trying to keep things warm, basically. Even the camera screens at a certain temperature will start ghosting, which makes it super tricky to kind of hold focus and all that. So it's putting warmers in behind that. We've made custom like foam coverings for a lot of the equipment, just to anything we can to like keep that cold out.
I just wonder if those conditions require like special lenses or something to keep the motors from freezing. Do you need special housings or anything like that for your cameras?
No. Surprisingly, we just use C300 Mark IIs, and those things seem to, apart from changing batteries all the time, seem to hold up all right. Batteries obviously just are the number one problem, and same with the screens ghosting. But yeah, it's a challenge, but it's fun.
Yeah, Joe, we were talking a little earlier about some of the things that you guys need to do simply to make the show. Like, I guess some crew members strap batteries to their bodies to keep the batteries warm. I mean, what are some of the things you've discovered over the years that you need to do just to make the show, just to capture the footage?
Sure. Well, I think Sim is being very modest in terms of, yes, those C300s are definitely the workhorses, but these crews that go out into the field are the real workhorses. I mean, obviously, Ricko and the conditions that he's living in and being a part of that, but capturing that are based, every cast member has about 4 crew members that it takes to film the show. And like Sim is saying, sure, you've got the C300, but we have drone, specialty, GoPro, and the batteries. Sim, you can talk more about this, but literally, with the lithium, I guess they die super quick, Sim, because in the cold, or the colder it is, the faster the battery dies. Same with the audio. And then also, the liquid crystal and the LCD screens basically freeze. And, you're filming a TV show, you're working, you're out there, there's bears, there's, depending on the year, there's mosquitoes, there's the weather, and, you got to stay alive. You got to actually watch where you're going. And I think that's a testament to them being out there, and of course the support of the cast. Ricko grew up in these conditions, Sim is a little more rugged than some, but some people we send out there, they're out, they live in LA like us, and they go up and they're literally in the middle of the woods with Ricko, literally with bears or moose being charged by moose. I'm fortunate I'm here, but behind the computer, maybe come say hi to Ricko in Fairbanks or something. But it's really these crews who go out in the field and are there in the elements, in the extreme, to capture this show, literally risking their lives.
I got frostbite the first time I went up there. I went up there in March. I went to Sue's season 2. I was super green, and I went out and we're just out filming. I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty cold. And I came in and the safety person at the time was like, you've got frostbite. I was like, oh wow. And then I kind of realized how serious it can get up there.
That sounds like an extremely painful situation. I have to ask you about some of the crazy things that have happened while you've made it, but for now, I want to get to the heart of this episode, the one that we just watched. And of course, the main storyline in that has to do with you, Ricko, with your journey to burn down your brother's hunting cabin. How long had you been considering doing that? I mean, how long had your mother been expressing a desire to have that done?
She's no longer with us. My late mom, she passed in 2003, but I remember her talking about it after it happened, that it should be burnt down. And I think in a way we thought, a cabin is real valuable to people living out here in the bush, and burning it down didn't make sense in our mind, but we thought, maybe we'll be in the area and we'll need it, or maybe we want to trap in there. It had so much value before the incident, but in the end, all those years went by, and no one ever went back out there, and it became kind of dilapidated. But in our minds, like in my mind, I felt like it was still there, it was still livable, and that it's just like he had just passed in it. So I think it didn't really, I wasn't really considering it too much until as I got older, I started realizing what was left in the end. And it was like this place that I had to go back to. It's like something that was, the trauma was still living inside of me, I think, in a way. The cabin was still there, and it's like, but no one ever returned for a reason. There's something spiritual or something that should have been done that we didn't do. So when I went back to do it, and when the episode was done, I think it really helped bury the hatchet in a way. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but it helped me to recover a lot by doing this thing. And capturing it on TV was, I think it was kind of like I spoke about, what do you want to do? And it's kind of came up, and then the producers in LA that I was talking, like, yeah, let's do it. So it kind of almost like an intervention thing happened, so it was a good thing though, I think, in the end, because I helped heal a lot, because before we gone out there and I burned it, I think I would cry if I talked about it. As you'd see in the episode, I ended up crying, when I went out there and I did it. And I think that's healing though. And it's something that it's easy to try to avoid in life. And, it's masculinity and all that can tend to cause men, and maybe even women too, maybe not so much as men, to hold stuff in too long and hold back from doing the right thing. And after we filmed it, I think I healed a lot. And I could talk about it a lot easier and talk about him a lot easier without feeling choked up, because it was a very traumatic event in my life.
Well, thank you for that answer. I was going to ask you a lot of those, a lot of things you just answered, because I wondered how you felt physically. I mean, if you felt like a burden being removed from you to see it burn. I mean, did you have a physical feeling watching that cabin burn?
Well, when I got there coming in, I remembered everything. When me and my dad had gone out there, I was going through that. It seemed like a big area right before the cabin. I could see where he was. He tried to walk to our cabin where we grew up and where we were living, and he turned around and he went back to the cabin. I could tell by the way he was walking that he was kind of short steps, and then he kind of veered off his path, and then he dropped a chunk of moose meat that he was carrying for survival to make it to the cabin, to our cabin, which was, I believe, like 18 miles away. So I knew in my mind something was wrong. So when we approached that cabin, I was kind of going back in time and seeing it again. And I probably went through those areas in my dreams. I probably dreamed about that last incident. So it was like walking in a surreal place and like walking through a bad dream in a way. So we get to the cabin. I remember when me and my late dad pulled up, we seen the blood outside the cabin. The door was half open. His snowshoes was off, but he took them off, but he left them laying on the door, going to the doorway. His gun was laying in the doorway, and we opened the cabin door. It was cracked, but when we walked in, I could see him in there, and you could tell by the eyes that he was dead. And, that's what hit me real hard when I walked into it, and there was, I started crying instantly. I think I was 13 at the time, and we were getting him for Christmas. It was like December 23rd, and he had died like maybe 5 or 6 days before we got to him. But I thought a bear got to him. I didn't know what happened. So I'm crying. My dad just he said, "Get out of here." He pushed me back. I remember that because he had to go in and check on him, And I just remember crying. I was outside. I was looking at his .243 rifle. I was like, this bear comes out. I got to grab that gun and try to use it. He had carried a handgun, 44, and then he came out and he said he accidentally shot himself. And we went all the way back. And I just remember my dad stopping me. Say, we weren't really religious or anything. We took Sundays off, but we prayed. And then I was about 13. He wasn't sure if I smoked cigarettes, and he was so hurt that he was smoking a cigarette. Do you need a cigarette? I thought it was kind of cool in a way that he asked me if I wanted a cigarette, and I said, no, I don't smoke. He wasn't sure. He was just trying to make me feel better in any way. And we went home, and it was horrible. The whole thing having to show up, and we're supposed to be coming back with him, and I had the food with me that I was going to give him because I knew he didn't have any good food. So all that was held inside. I can continue talking, but I still get a little emotional. But it's like I was holding that, and that's why my late mom, she's Athabascan Indian, full-blooded. She knows the culture real well, and she was telling us you got to burn it down when something like that happens. And walking back into it was like it happened yesterday, and I was going back to check out the area again because in your mind you want to check the area out again. It's like it was still the same to me or something, but it wasn't. It was pretty dilapidated. And then when we burned it, in the end, I remember thinking back when I burned it, it's like a warm feeling and thinking of my mom a lot and thinking of my brother and knowing that we did the right thing by going out there. And I say we, and the episode is I, but the whole film crew being there was probably a support for me too. It's hard to walk into that alone. And I felt good, and I felt like we did something right, but not only by him, but also my late mom. And just watching the fire and the sparks and stuff going up, I could feel that we did the right thing, and I honored him in a big way, and honored my late mom too because she knew what she was talking about.
Tony, Sim, Joe, obviously capturing something like that, a story like that that's so personal. You've got to be very sensitive about it. You got to be careful about it. Can you guys tell me about it? Well, first of all, how you decided to include it, and how you shaped it. Sam, how you captured it. Tony, how you shaped it in the editing room. Can you tell me something about the filmmaking of that story?
Sure, Sam, Tony, you guys want to?
Yeah. I think, that's hands down the most powerful story I've shot for Life Below Zero. And it was a real privilege, and I was very grateful to be apart from it. But basically, it was just to kind of stand back and try and, let Ricko tell that story, because it is such a personal story as he's gone into, and just to try and document it and just follow him as he goes through that little journey. And just to be there was, it was humbling. And
I'll say from the editorial point of view, putting that story together is very similar to what Sim was just saying. Was that if you see most of the show, it's obviously there's like a lot of editing between moments and scenes. And in this one, I just let Ricko tell his story, and tried to keep it like it's a very universal story of loss. It's obviously very specific to Ricko, but in that sense, picking music for it. I didn't want anything with a lot of instrumentation, just very simple drones, just something very evocative for a person that's not tied to anything that you can really put your hands around. And telling that story just was, to me, it along the same lines as Sim. Like it was the most powerful thing I've ever had to edit for the show. And it was a real privilege, just seeing the vulnerability that Ricko allowed himself to present to the show, to the audience, and that Sim and the rest of the crew captured just the right footage to tell that story. Like it was, it was well done. Yeah.
Joe, do you want to add something to that about the decision to include it and the way you wanted it to play out in that episode and placed in the season?
Sure. I mean, I think like always, we strive to have things play out as sort of documentary and the reality of the situation. Of course, when it's a subject like that and such, I guess, intense emotions, that it's always best to just let it play. That said, the only reason we were able to do that is because of the trust that Ricko had in us to tell that story. Obviously, just to have that story happen in general, Ricko could have done that without us over the years, but to trust Sim and the crew to film it, and then to trust the editorial team, and then to trust the network and BBC Studios to tell that story in a way that is true and authentic. I think the first time I saw it, Tony and I were talking and knew that would be the scene that we wanted to showcase as an example of how we try to elevate reality TV, and something that is personally, I think, one of the greatest moments that we've captured on camera, and something that when I watched, in addition to extreme appreciation for Ricko for sharing that story, felt lucky and excited to say, like, wow, we're doing something different here. This show, of course, it's a show that I work on, so I'm maybe biased, but really is elevating reality television.
I want to shift gears a little bit because you're talking about, before you're talking about all the hours you put into it and trying to let things unfold in documentary style so you're not going to interfere with them much. But in a show about living in Alaska, especially out in the bush, out in the wild, I imagine that there's some pretty hairy situations you get into, not just from the cold, maybe it's the cold, but just thinking about encounters with animals or the environment changing on you suddenly. Can you guys, all four of you, can you think of some of the hairiest situations you've been in on the show?
I'll let Sim and Ricko take that one. Tony's edit bay and my office are pretty dangerous and extreme, but I think probably Ricko and Sim can talk more to the perilous moments out there.
I'll take it away. You take it away, Ricko.
Okay. I think when I was a kid, probably I was so scared. I remember sometimes when I was traveling, say 40 miles over, we're going overland by snow machine with my late dad, and we hit a storm, old snow machines back then, and you can't see, the snow is just whirling in front of you. It's just like you're hypnotized by it. Your lights are shining into it, and we lose the trail. My dad has to unhook the toboggan. He can't pull me no more. I'm in the toboggan, and he drives off, and I'm probably, I think, 11 years old at the time, maybe. And he disappears in the storm, and I'm going to die if he don't come back. And I just remember those times, like, crying and praying. I get real religious when I'm in those moments. It's sad to say. I feel guilty about it. I'm like, I can get a little cocky sometimes. I'm like, man, I think back of those times, and I remember being real afraid. And And thankfully, he came back. You know, some of those moments like that were probably my scariest moments. It's just dark, I mean, a roaring wind and snow, and he comes back because your trail disappears so fast. You know, it's like, what if he gets turned around and he can't see the trail? And that's possible, very possible. You're out there and you lose your trail. You don't know where you came from. You could backtrack it so far and it's gone. And I remember making it to Hoosler though, and just feeling really good about getting here. And then, but for older, like when I'm older now, I'd say I'm moving around in the woods a lot, and it's like water danger, and of course always storms. I'm scared of storms, and the weather will always kill you. Like my late mom said, no matter how strong you feel, no matter how powerful your equipment you're using seems, always know that Mother Nature is the most powerful thing, and the weather will always kill you. That's a native proverb, I guess, is the weather is always most powerful. And I think of that a lot, so I respect it a lot. And then, but the most hair raising is when a bear comes into the cabin, like last week, there was one in the cabin, you know, where, you know, the gun is ready, locked and loaded, and you're dialed in. I mean, any little sound, I'm afraid, but I'm not letting myself be afraid. Another thing is like cutting up a moose, you get it at night, and a grizzly, or even sometimes two grizzlies come in and they wait till you can't see, and they have night vision compared to us. You can see at night, plus they have a powerful nose. They don't have very good vision, but at night they can see a lot better than us. And just that huffing and breaking sticks and that loud, deep bass in their growl and everything, that's a very, very scary situation. I don't care how strong you think you are, when that thing is popping off like that and it wants that meat, and it knows it has the advantage, and it waited till the light got dark enough where you can't see your sights and stuff. It's like, okay, you got it, and I'm backing out. And that situation is very scary, and not wanting to turn it. You know, your instincts is turn and run, but you know that's what that animal does. It uses, that's why it rolls, and it's on him, because in that moment when it attacks an animal, it sounds it makes, it's hitting the ground, it's breaking sticks, and the smell of that animal is just, it's overwhelming. It makes it, that's another native, I don't know if it's a proverb, but they tell you it makes your mind, and whatever animal it's attacking, your mind just freaks out from the sounds and the smells and stuff. And just having to keep your ground and keep your headlight shined ahead of you and walk backwards with your gun ready. And those are hairy situations right there that, it'll test you to the fullest. And I've been in situations.
I'm sorry, Ricko, I got to say, you're not doing wonders for the Alaska Tourism Board. I'm sorry, we're running out of time, but I wanted to hear from Sim about one of the hairiest things happened to you in production on the show.
Yeah, no, I should have gone first. After I can't really follow Ricko, but I think a couple of situations. We've had bears in camp for sure. I've been sleeping in my tent and right next to the food tent, and woken up and seen two big paw prints on the side. And we all kind of woke up in the morning and like looked around and realized it would come like silly, like very close to maybe having a serious bear encounter. So we quickly unpacked our little electric bear fence and thought that might keep us safe for the rest. And other than that, I think just trying to keep, like, I've done some missions, staying in tents with -40 and having like a little stove that we're like very small because we're traveling light, and trying to keep that warm to keep ourselves warm, and like camera gear and batteries, like, because it's one thing to go out and film, but actually having a place to come back and have warm area. So we were sitting, it was myself and safety guide camera operator Rob, and we were setting our alarms every hour and a half to keep that going, to keep us warm and the camera gear warm through the night so we could keep filming. And that was a week on -40. So I think those kind of situations when you're out there, and then you kind of really, I mean, not to mention using the restroom or anything like that.
I don't like it when it's 50 degrees, much less -40. We're just about out of time, but Tony, Joe, can you guys think of a scene or a moment in the show that is one of your favorites right now that just jumps in your mind that you just love when you see?
Well, there's one I can think of actually with Ricko, kind of along the lines of the dangers out there. Was, I believe, Ricko, you were arriving to your cabin with Skylar and Scarlett, and there was a sign of a bear had broken in, and you guys were approaching it, and it was just a very tense moment, and it was very real. Like, that was, you know, a lot of times when it's just one person, sure, that's dangerous. But his kids were out there with him, and that really elevated the stakes. That made it really feel like, oh man, it's real out there. You know, like the stakes are real.
I think for me, like, well, I guess my scariest moment is anytime I get a sat phone call in the middle of the night. That's always the scariest. That's never usually good news. But that said, you know, it is no doubt that it is extremely dangerous out there, even though we do have an incredible safety team, you know, a safety person who is out at each location. But for me, there's not one favorite moment, but I'd say across the board, it's the moments like Ricko burning down the cabin, where you really get to see the human condition. Of course, it's always amazing to see the danger, to see the bears, to see incredible weather or extreme snow machining. But really, when you get to have a moment of connection with a fellow human being, like you know, we talked about that, it might not be something that specifically happened to all of us, but even we all understand loss, and it's those moments, the moments where there is that connection, that is a universal connection, that really are my favorites.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid we are out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experiences on Life Below Zero with all of our viewers, Ricko, Tony, Sim, and Joe. And to all of you viewers, thank you so much for joining tonight's entry of the Envelope Live Screening Series. We hope to see you all in the flesh sooner than later. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Gentlemen, audience, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Take care.